I work at the front desk of a small gym. Most of the time, I cover the evening shift, which usually means working until late at night. It's a quiet gig, especially after 9 p.m. The regulars come in, do their thing, and head out. By that time, the gym is pretty much empty, except for maybe one or two people lifting weights in the far corner. That night was supposed to be like any other night. I was at my desk counting down the minutes until my shift was over. I had a newspaper open in front of me, pretending to read, but honestly, I wasn't paying much attention. My eyes glazed over the headlines, and my mind was somewhere else. I was thinking about what I'd eat when I got home, maybe catch a show before bed. Then I felt it. You know that feeling when you can just sense someone watching you? It was subtle at first, just a prickling on the back of my neck. I glanced up from my paper and saw a guy standing near the free weights. He wasn't lifting anything. He wasn't even stretching. He was just standing there, staring at me. I tried not to make it obvious that I'd noticed him. It's a gym, after all. People sometimes look over at the desk to ask questions or check the time, but this guy was different. He didn't look away when I caught him. He just kept looking at me, his face blank, like he was trying to figure something out. Slowly, he started walking toward me, his eyes locked on mine the whole time. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he needed a towel or wanted to know when we closed. But as he got closer, something felt off. His steps were slow, deliberate, and his expression never changed. Just that blank, almost robotic look. Finally, he stopped in front of the desk. There was a long pause, like he didn't know what to say. Then, without a smile or any expression at all, he asked, "Do you know where the restroom is?" I blinked, a little confused. The restroom was right behind him, just a few feet away. The door was marked clearly with a big sign. You couldn't miss it. I pointed, trying to keep my voice calm. "Yeah, it's right there." The guy didn't even look where I pointed. He just stared at me for a few seconds longer, like he hadn't heard what I said. Then, without another word, he turned around and slowly walked toward the restroom door. I watched him go, feeling uneasy, but trying to shake it off. Weird people come into the gym all the time, right? Maybe he was just tired or distracted. I went back to my newspaper, though I couldn't focus on it anymore. My eyes kept flicking towards the restroom door, waiting for the guy to come out. But a few minutes passed, and there was no sign of him. The gym was so quiet, all I could hear was the faint hum of the lights overhead and the occasional thud of weights hitting the floor in the distance. Then I heard something else. A loud bang from the back of the gym. Near the storage room. My heart skipped a beat. The storage room was off limits to members. No one should be back there. And I stood up, hesitating for a moment. My first thought was that the weird guy had wandered back there, maybe messing with something he wasn't supposed to. But the bang had sounded more like something heavy falling, or maybe even breaking. My stomach tightened. I grabbed my keys from the desk and made my way toward the back. As I got closer, I saw the window in the storage room. It had a large crack running through it like someone had thrown something at it. Cold air leaked in through the opening, and I could hear the faint sound of wind outside. But there was no sign of anyone. The room was empty. That was it for me. I wasn't sticking around to find out what had caused the bang, or why the window was broken. I turned on my heel, grabbed my bag from behind the desk, and left the gym without looking back. As I stepped outside, I felt like the air was thicker, heavier. Something wasn't right, and I had no intention of staying to figure it out. As I walked toward my car, the lights inside the gym suddenly flickered and went out. The entire place plunged into darkness. I froze, staring at the building. For a few seconds, everything was completely still, like the gym itself had just died. Then, as if nothing had happened, the lights blinked back on. But I wasn't going back in. I was done for the night. The next morning, I came in to talk to my boss. I explained everything. About the guy asking for the restroom, the bang, the broken window. I figured maybe there was something wrong with the cameras, or maybe someone had snuck in, but my boss didn't seem too concerned. He just nodded and said he'd check the footage to see what had happened. A little later, he called me into his office. His face was pale, and he looked more confused than anything. I checked the cameras, he said slowly. There's nothing there. I stared at him, not understanding. What do you mean, nothing? I mean, there's no one on the footage. You're sitting at the desk, but there's no guy. You're talking to no one. The restroom door never opens. And when you go to check the back room, no one's there either. It's just you. I felt my stomach drop. That didn't make any sense. I saw the guy. I talked to him. But the cameras showed nothing. I didn't know what to say. My boss looked as freaked out as I felt. We sat in silence for a moment before he shrugged. I don't know what happened last night, he said, but the window's fixed, and the cameras are working fine now. Maybe it was just a glitch or something. I didn't argue. I didn't know what to believe anymore. But as I left the office and walked back to the front desk, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I saw that night, whatever happened, wasn't something a camera could explain. And I'm just glad I left early when I did. It was a typical late-night workout session. The gym was almost empty, just the way I liked it. There's something peaceful about exercising when the world feels quiet, as if the weights and the machines are mine alone. I had just finished warming up and was about to start my routine when I realized something. My ear pods, I muttered to myself, a slight chuckle escaping my lips. I had forgotten them in my car. I had grown so used to working out with music that the thought of lifting weights with a beat in the background felt strange. Music is what keeps me going during tough sets, and without it, I felt a little lost. Guess I gotta go grab it, I said under my breath, laughing at how attached I was to my music. I quickly walked out of the gym and headed toward the parking lot, where I had parked my car just a few hours earlier, but as I stepped outside, a strange feeling settled over me. The parking lot was empty. At first, I thought I was just mistaken. I looked around, thinking maybe I had parked in a different spot. The gym's parking lot wasn't huge, and I was sure I had parked close to the entrance. But my car wasn't there, not in the spot I remembered, not in any of the nearby spaces. In fact, there were no cars at all. That's weird, I said, rubbing the back of my neck. Maybe I had parked further away than I thought. I decided to pull out my phone. Luckily, I had a tracker on my car, so I could easily find its location. I opened the app and waited for it to load. When the tracker finally showed the location of my car, I froze. The car was back at my house. How is that possible? I whispered to myself, staring at the screen in disbelief. There was no way I had left the car at home. I had driven to the gym. I knew that for a fact. Confused, I stood there for a minute, trying to make sense of the situation. Was it a glitch in the tracker? Did someone somehow drive my car home without me knowing? The more I thought about it, the stranger it seemed. After a moment, I decided to book a taxi to go check it out. Something didn't feel right, and I wanted to see what was going on. The ride home was quiet, the taxi driver not asking any questions as I stared out the window, trying to figure out what was happening. When we finally pulled up to my house, I felt a chill crawl down my spine. My car was sitting there, parked in the driveway like it hadn't moved at all. But something else caught my eye. There was a figure in the driver's seat. I blinked, trying to make sure I wasn't seeing things. No, there was definitely someone in the car. A person dressed in a black hoodie, sitting in the seat where I should have been. My heart started racing. Hey, stop here, I told the taxi driver, my voice shaky. I handed him some money and got out of the car slowly. Standing a few feet away from my driveway, I could barely breathe. It was in my car, and how had they gotten it here? I moved closer, trying to get a better look. The figure in the car wasn't moving much, just sitting there, head down, as if waiting for something. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. This wasn't just some mix-up. Someone had stolen my car and brought it back to my house for reasons I couldn't understand. I pulled out my phone, ready to call the police, but then I stopped. What if the person in the car tried to drive off again? Or worse, what if they tried to break into my house? I didn't have time to think. My eyes darted to the small taser I always carried in my pocket for protection. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Before I could second-guess myself, I approached the car quietly. I could see the person fiddling with something on the dashboard, as if they were trying to start the car again. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as I moved closer, my taser ready. In one quick motion, I opened the door and pressed the taser against the person's arm. They let out a yelp, their body convulsing, as the electric shock hit them. I pulled them out of the car and watched as they crumpled to the ground, still dazed. I jumped into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut and locking it. My hands were shaking as I started the car. I hit the gas and sped away from the house, my heart still pounding from the adrenaline. Once I was a safe distance away, I pulled over and dialed the police. I told them everything. How my car had somehow ended up back at my house with a stranger inside, and how I had tased the intruder and driven off. The cops arrived about 10 minutes later, but when we got back to my house, the person was gone. Are you sure you tased someone? The officer asked, shining his flashlight around my driveway. Yeah, positive, I replied, still shaken. I don't know how they disappeared so quickly. The officers took my statement and said they'd look into it, but deep down, I wasn't sure they'd find it. Whoever that person was, they were long gone by now. As I stood there watching the police cars drive away, I couldn't help but feel unsettled. I don't know who that guy was. I don't know why he stole my car or how he got the keys. All I know is that something weird happened tonight. Something that didn't make any sense. I just hope it never happens again. And I hope wherever that guy is, he ends up behind bars before he tries something like this again.